how's it going? It's been a minute. My apologies. I suffered a bereavement at the start of October and decided to take the month off. So I know it's not the best thing to do whenever you're starting up a YouTube channel, but thank you so much for your patience. There's obviously been a lot of A Song by Some Fire news that's occurred since I have been away, so we will have to get caught up with all that. But for the time being, I want to look at this news story that we are getting a Game of Thrones movie. Because I think it's very interesting news, and the fact that it's made waves is also very interesting to me, because I'm pretty sure this is something we've been talking about for the best of a year, maybe more. Definitely since Aegon's conquest had been announced. And so I just want to go through a couple of articles today, talking about this, talking about previous plans for Game of Thrones movies, and what this could potentially mean, despite the fact it's in very, very early stages of development, and really we shouldn't be giving it all this hype and heed. But, you know, if people want to talk about it, I'm here to chat. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to go through this article by The Hollywood Reporter. So this came out on Halloween Day. Speaking of Halloween, I did some fun outfits, and I am going to insert them here if I remember. But yes, this came out on Halloween Day and caused some waves. So the title being Game of Thrones movie in early development at Warner Bros. The studio has been quietly developing a film based on George R.R. Martin's fantasy universe as HBO/Max and Warner Bros. Increasingly cross-pollinate the company's big fantasy titles. And so, obviously, this caused quite a stir with people who've not been paying attention. Multiple sources describe the project as very early stages of development, with no filmmaker, cast or writer yet being attached, but the company is keen on exploring the idea of Westeros invading cinemas. So I also have another couple articles we're going to look at here, but essentially summing it up, there's been a number of times where the series has looked at doing a film, and obviously this one, it says here that no film writer, cast or writer has been attached yet. And so just to talk about what we currently have in development, we obviously have a House of the Dragon, and we have Night of the Seven Kingdoms coming in supposedly spring/summer next year, to 2025. And obviously we have writer, cast, and you know, the whole thing is currently being adapted, but this has explicitly said that there is no writer attached, so it's safe to say that it's nothing to do with those two franchises. They're not going to end House of the Dragon with their 8-episode final 2 seasons, 16 episodes. They're not going to do their 16 episodes and then end with like a Regency film, as far as we know, right? And they're not going to need a film necessarily for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. They could have been films in and of themselves, but probably didn't have enough theatrics and drama going on in these wholesome little novellas to translate onto the big screen. Now, that being said, these are not the only things we currently have in the works in the Westeros universe. So I've seen a lot of articles. There was one in particular where a blog poster was talking about their concern that this would turn into a season 9 for Game of Thrones, which, let's be realistic, that's not going to happen. The cast of Game of Thrones are not going to come back for a film. They're not. And as much as Benioff and Weiss might have expressed their interest earlier to turn Game of Thrones into a theatrical release film franchise, they express absolutely no interest in coming back to this franchise, and they know that the fan base will not welcome them back, despite the fact a lot of people were claiming at the end of season 2 of House of the Dragon that they wanted them back. But surely if that was to happen, they would not be happy. So it's safe to say this is not going to be a continuation of the main series Game of Thrones. Like, not only would it be an absolute mess in terms of none of the original cast and crew and writers coming back, but it would also be a mess in terms of the story obviously not having the source material finished, but it would just turn into fan fiction at that stage. It just wouldn't be consistent. And would we necessarily want to watch that? Probably not. They probably wouldn't have the audience retention that you would need to get people to actually leave their house and go to the cinema. And a lot of people obviously still have a bitter taste in their mouth from season 8. So I think it's pretty safe to say nothing to do with the original series. I also think it's safe to say nothing to do with current prequels. So basically what we have is 2 current airing shows, which I don't think will be touched. And then we have 2 more shows in the Westeros universe that are currently in development. That being Nymeria and her 10,000 ships and Aegon's Conquest. And as far as Aegon's Conquest, obviously we have writers attached to both of these, okay? So there's talk of doing, Corlys's 9 Voyages, but that is set to be an animated show, and I highly doubt they're going to give us an animated movie with a theatre release. It doesn't seem like something that HBO would ever do. And even in collaboration with Warner Bros. But obviously, that being set aside, animated things being set aside, what we are then left with is these 2 other shows that are currently in development that we're aware of, which I, again, we'll bring it into conversation about the films, alright? So, Nymeria and 10,000 Ships. Ebony Booth is currently attached to this as a writer and is currently, writing the pitch for this. Third time lucky, obviously, as we heard from George R. R. Martin in a previous blog post. Obviously, there was 2 previous writers attached to this, neither of which were successful with their pitch, and it was given over to Ebony Booth, so fingers crossed we get that. But there's been no indication that that's going to turn into a film, so I don't know. I mean, it has enough theatrics, it has enough drama, it would need that high budget to cover the conflict that they're going to experience, and also it might be beneficial given the special effects and stuff that they would also need for this. But again, we have no indication. That's very, very, very early stages, and that's about the height of all we know about that. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in the basket of believing that that's going to be the film. At least that they're talking about here. And even more so again, because they have stated that there's no writer attached to this supposed film that they're talking about. Now, as far as the Conquest show, the Targaryen Conquest show, we have a writer attached to that, Madsen Tomlin, who we've spoken about before on the channel. Thanks to everyone who watched that video. But obviously, he's attached to this. He was previously writing on the Matt Reeves Batman show, and then obviously came over to this. That was announced in April. And, that all seems to be good. He seems to have a very good working relationship with Martin that he's talked about previously, that we have also talked about here. And there was early rumblings at the time. So this is a Screen Rant article, so, take that however you wish. So the project would eventually become Aegon's Conquest, which was originally announced in April 2023, though it was somewhat lost in the shuffle of other Game of Thrones related updates, obviously because we had House of the Dragon updates coming. At the time, reports suggested a feature film might also be in the works, which set up the series, but nothing has materialised since the initial reveal. So whenever I first read this news article from the Hollywood Reporter saying that we were potentially getting a film, when I had just seen the title, originally I was like, okay, they must be going back to this feature film idea for the Aegon's Conquest show. And, Dragon Demands previously talked about this at length, the potential that this could be a big feature film, potential theatre release where the actual conquest happens and then all of the politicking and stuff would come in later, the succession could come later in the form of, seasons of a TV show, but that this feature film would initially set up the series. So that was my initial thoughts when I first read this, but as soon as I read that they had no writers, no producers, no cast, no anything, especially that there was no writer attached, that kind of rules this out as well, because obviously we know Madsen Tomlin's attached to this, and as far as we know, everything is going well behind the scenes and he continues to work on this. So again, I don't think this is going to be anything to do with him or with the Conquest show. It is in very, very early stages of development. It has been reiterated across every single article that I have read on the matter, and you know, there's been a lot of things in very early stages of development. The Jon Snow show that has been shelved indefinitely, that we're not going to get. And the fact that we also have Blood Moon that went as far as filming the pilot and was scrapped because obviously we heard all the rumours about that, and it didn't seem the most self-aware of shows, despite the fact it was really trying to do something progressive. It just maybe needed a bit of internal scrutiny on itself. But that would also kind of indicate to me that it's probably not going to be a long night film either, given the fact that, you know, they put so much money into the Blood Moon prequel and then just scrapped it. So it's hard to imagine what this could possibly be. And I would love, if you have any thoughts and theories, stick them down in the comment section and we'll get a conversation going. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's a lot of stuff currently going on, and I would be very surprised if this was to come anytime soon, but I suppose it could be released at the end of House of the Dragon to kind of do a tying up of things, given the fact that they have absolutely axed 4 episodes of us at least, because, you know, a lot can be done in 4 hours, and we're not necessarily going to get that, so a feature film might be a good idea at the end of that. But, you know, there's a lot of potential, and I will absolutely go and see whatever it is. No matter how bad it is, I will go and see it. And if it's wonderful, thank God, it's what we deserve, it's what George deserves. Stepping aside from the whole initial part of the video and talking about the fact that there are, you know, this conversation is being had, it's in early development, there is all these other shows that are going on that I don't think it's attached to, obviously because there is no writer attached to it at any stage, and also HBO and Warner Bros have refused to comment any further on this, so clearly showing that it's in very, very early stages. Like, this is just conversation at the water cooler. Like, this is not in black and white, this is not people signing contracts, this is not seeking out writers, nothing. So I'm not going to put too much stock in it just yet. That being said, this part of the video is now just going to chat about the fact that this conversation has already been happening. Just to note, back in 2014, literally 10 years ago, George R. R. Martin told The Hollywood Reporter that he was down for a movie, saying it all depends on how long the main series runs. So do we run for 7 years? Do we run for 8? Do we run for 10? The books get bigger and bigger, brackets, in scope. It might need a feature to tie things up, something with a feature budget, so, you know, and then those dragons get real big, you know, which they do, and they only get bigger. If only he knew then what we know now. God, could you picture he's seen Vagar then? Wouldn't believe his eyes, God love him. But, so this conversation was happening as much as 10 years ago. This is a decade-old conversation. And then obviously in April 2023, there was a conversation about a feature film to set up Aegon's Conquest. But there was also conversation by Dan and Dave, whenever they'd kind of run out of actual source material for the show. There was conversation about, instead of having the last 2 seasons, season 7 and season 8, and the 13 episodes being split across them, that instead they should do a trilogy to wrap up the series. And I mean, it's all speculation now at this stage, like how realistically it would have went in terms of if they had the budget for three theatrical films instead of 13 episodes, if that would have made a difference, if they had that sort of production value, if it hadn't made a difference, if they had been working with different organizations, say if they had a tie down Warner Bros. And this is coming from the Wall Street Journal, by the way. So Benioff and Weiss confirmed that their original plan was to end Game of Thrones with these 3 films instead of 13 episodes stretched across the final 2 seasons. But when they went to do this, the executives basically reminded them that it was for HBO, standing for home box office and not away box office, which I thought was absolutely and utterly hilarious. Can you imagine them in there trying to pitch this to a group of executives and they're just sitting getting laughed off the stage? But I mean, these conversations were happening. So it was happening with George R. R. Martin in 2014. He was talking about the potential for the show. You know, a couple years later, having this conversation with Benioff and Weiss, talking about the fact that they wanted the final 2 seasons to be films, and then obviously the conversation coming up again with Aegon's conquest only last year, well, I suppose almost 2 years at this stage. This is not a new conversation, so this article is not giving us very much in the ways of new information, nor is it under just a new conversation. And Dragon Demand's last video that he just posted on this very topic is very interesting. Just hear his perspective. I think he's also a really good... God bless. Anyway, I think Dragon Demands is a really good source of information for all this stuff because, you know, I heard it there first, realistically. And again, he was just saying in his video that this is not a new conversation. Now the comments were also noting the fact that it says that there's no writers, so it's definitely not like something that's already airing. That's all well and good, but again, it's very early stages, so we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see if this goes anywhere. I would personally love any sort of Song of Ice and Fire show to end up in the cinema. I would love to get all dressed up and go and sit and watch it. Make friends with similar interests. I think it would almost be like back in the days doing the Game of Thrones watch parties where everyone gets together and like you all get really hyped about it. It'd be like that on a bigger scale. I would be so down for it. And listen, any new content that's going to come from this universe, I'm going to be all over it. Please, for the love of God, let George be so involved. Let him be so involved. God bless that man. Anyway, but yeah, that is pretty much the roundup as far as that goes. I planned for that to be much shorter than it was, but I was rambling quite a bit, so I'm going to try and edit it down as much as possible. But first video back in a while, it's a bit rusty, you know. I'm not as concise as I would like to be. I say that as if every single video on this channel isn't like me talking for half an hour about something that's like 5 seconds long. But anyway, it's nice to be back, and I'm going to try and get some more stuff done. Filmed, uploaded, hopefully this week. Try and get back into the swing of things and make up for lost time. This is probably going to be a different video in and of itself. I'll chat about other things that I want to talk about, because obviously all the videos on here so far are talking about A Song of Ice and Fire, but like I've said multiple times, I'm interested in talking about other things too, and so any input you have, of course, I will take it on board, but I also have a lot of ideas that I would love to talk about, so that'll probably end up being another video, just a very quick channel update, and hopefully it won't be half an hour of me talking about something that could be summarised in 5 seconds. So anyway, it's been very nice to be back, and if you're watching this, thank you so much. I hope you stick around for some other videos, and if not, it's been lovely having you pass through. But either way, yes, obviously I noted at the start of this video that I kind of disappeared because of bereavement, and some of you that have gone over and graciously followed me on Instagram did see that and sent me some lovely messages and some support, and it was very much appreciated, so thank you so much for that, and thank you for watching this video and joining us once again. And if you're new, hope you enjoyed. Also, you know what, before I go, right, I'm gonna obviously like summarize everything else in another video and try and keep it very brief, but would we be interested in unboxing videos, because I found Dark Sister online and I really want to order it, but I need an excuse, and if I'm like, oh, it's fine, I'm gonna make a video about it, then I'll excuse myself and get it. Would we be interested in an unboxing? Also, I found this other sword, which is going ridiculously cheap, almost so cheap that I'm concerned that it's a scam, but it's very similar to Frostmourne from Warcraft, but not quite. Like, it's not a replica, but I mean, someone's gonna lose it if they ever find out. But anyway, I need to wrap things up here, but thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one.